Just as we thought Australia was winding down its role in Afghanistan, where 32 Australian soldiers have died in a decade, the government's announced our forces are to take over the lead role in Uruzgan province. The explanation is that the change will help manage the transition as foreign forces hand over to Afghan troops. But will it put more Australian soldiers in the firing line? Retired Major General John Cantwell is a former commander of Australia's troops in Afghanistan, and he joins me now from Maroochydore. Welcome.
Thanks, Chris.
Now, you've had a chance to look at what the government's proposing. What do you think?
Look, I think this is the right decision taken at the right time. Given that Australia has taken on the responsibility of training the Afghan 4th Brigade, which is the Afghan component of soldiers in the province, we've had that responsibility for some time. It's a logical next step in the transition process to hand over responsibility to the local security forces.
What does it mean, though? Does it mean more equipment? Does it mean more forces?
Look, I don't believe it will. Australia already has a large number of officers in the headquarters that commands all of the forces in Uruzgan province. And this will, I believe, see a simple change of command role to see the Australian deputy, who is currently a colonel, step up and be the nominated commander. What isn't entirely clear, but I believe is becoming more clear, is what are the implications for the other enablers that the US has been providing. I understand that they will continue to provide those, and that would be vital to the continuation of the mission.
So some United States forces will be staying in the province?
I believe that's the case. There'll certainly be a requirement for them to continue to provide key capabilities that Australia just doesn't bring to the party. Helicopters, artillery support, some high-end surveillance capabilities and other specialist roles. I believe they will continue to be provided by the US, and that's absolutely vital that we do that, because if they weren't provided, as you suggested, that would certainly put more risk on the Australians at a time when we're trying to reduce that risk and hand that risk over to the Afghan soldiers, along with responsibility for their own country.
Now, when you were in Afghanistan, the Dutch were in the process of leaving. Then, as I understand it, the government was loath to take on that responsibility as the leader of the province.
Yeah, they certainly were. I was, as you say, had an oversight role of that transition from Dutch to a new command relationship. And some would argue that Australia might have stepped up to take command at that stage, but that was absolutely not on the government's radar, and every suggestion that that might be a way forward was very quickly stomped on. I think this will turn out about right, Chris. The success that our Australian soldiers have achieved so far has been tremendous. This is a good, logical step to get us onto that tramway, that track that takes us towards a complete handover. And if we're in charge, it stands to reason that we've got a better control over where the train goes.
Is it likely that it might increase the threat to Australian troops?
Look, there'll always be a risk to Australian troops. It is a dangerous place, and we saw that just in the last few days with the wounding of another digger who bravely went back to rescue the Afghan soldier who was also caught up in the explosion. Those risks won't go away. I don't believe there'll be an increase to the risk to Australian soldiers. It will certainly be a tough assignment, and the transition, as it rolls out over the next 18 months, will present more risks. There's no question of that as we hand over. And that's why it's important that we retain a good central nucleus of capability and a good number of troops on the ground right through till we finish the mission.
Now, on another issue, you had a hand in writing the last Defence White Paper, which came out in 2009, which really called for an ambitious expansion of our defence forces and their capabilities. What do you make of what you've seen in the recent defence budget, where there will be significant cuts?
I think the decision is a shocker, and it is part of a process of undermining a decision by this government to really set ourselves onto a coherent, logical and sustainable future for a defence capability. And this decision blows holes in it right from the top to the bottom. It is a very poor policy decision.
Finally, what do you think will be the long-term effect then?
The effects will be long-term because they will erode the capability to generate forces, to train forces, to keep the capability at a level where we need it as a modern, competent and credible defence force. It's short-term policy for a short-term game, and it is very dangerous in my view.
John Cantwell, thank you.
You're welcome.